Build a media brand. It's very fashionable advice in the marketing world right now, but what does it actually mean? And what does it actually look like? Obaid Durrani, head of content and brand at HockeyStack, has managed to nail its execution. With HockeyStack's Netflix-style streaming platform, The Flow, Obaid, his team, and a group of very talented content creators have managed to create incredibly educational and entertaining content. In this episode, Obaid shares his entire approach to producing B2B media content that not only generates a tremendous amount of attention, but attracts audiences of all seniorities. He's generous enough to go real deep into his easy mode framework and walk us through what it takes to create highly engaging content on social, owned platforms, and more. It's a process that can be used by in-house marketers and creators alike who are looking to build their personal brand. Enjoy. Obaid, pleasure to have you today. I want to learn all about what you've been up to at HockeyStack, but before we jump into that, for those who don't know what HockeyStack is, can you tell us a little bit about the brand, the product, and the problem that you guys are solving there?
Yeah, so the product itself, HockeyStack, is an attribution and analytics software. Essentially, the way it works is we have a tracking script. You enter that script on all of the pages of your website, so that way we're able to extract activity on those pages, and then you integrate your entire tech stack. So Salesforce, HubSpot, your CRM, your ad platforms, all that stuff. So then we're able to pull all of the data from those platforms, clean it, turn it into one nice data set, and then present that information to you as customer journeys that you can analyze. So with your website visitors, not only are you able to see what they're doing, but you're able to track all of their activity on and off of your website, all the way back until they first heard about you. So if they've ever visited a webinar, talked to your AE, you sent them a gift, all of these marketing and sales touch points are tracked in that customer journey. So that's it, at the core of it, that's the product itself. And then on top of that, it's like, hey, okay, we have all this data. All right, well, let's report on the data. So that's where the analytics come in. You can do all types of reporting on this data. And it's like, okay, well, we do reporting, so let's let them make their own report. So there's a no-code dashboard builder where you build your own reports and stuff. So it's a pretty awesome tool. And the problem that we solve is it's right now attribution, as we all know, it's pretty freaking broken. Last touch, first touch. This is still how the majority of the industry operates. And then it's like, okay, I know my podcast is effective, but how can I prove that? Like, there's no way to prove that. And it's like, I know my LinkedIn content is effective. How can I prove that? And so HockeyStack is how you can show all of the collective impact that your activities are having on these conversions.
Amazing, man. I think I read somewhere that you can attribute things that are happening on social from like LinkedIn DMs. How do you actually go about doing that?
Now the technology behind it is, I don't know.
That's fair. Putting you on the spot there.
Right? Like I can't explain the technical aspects of it, but the way it works right now is our AE, Nate, he's our one and only salesperson. So the way it works is he gets notifications of high intent accounts. So we've set it up in HockeyStack to where if a company, so to speak, ticks a few boxes, right? Like they've played around with our live demo. They've seen our LinkedIn ads. They've visited the flow. So they've spent a couple of times with our series, and they've read our narrative blog series. So this is one set of criteria that we have. So when an account ticks all of these boxes, Nate gets a notification telling him that there's this high intent company. And then he reaches out to them. And he's also able to see through HockeyStack, like which people from that company are interacting with our brand. So then he'll grab like the most engaged person, for example, and send them a DM. And then when he does that, that also shows up in their customer journey, like, and it says like communication initiated in the buyer's journey. So it's pretty crazy, man. And I love to geek out about the tool. That's the whole reason I joined the company in the first place. It's I saw the product and I was like, holy crap. And so yeah, I think it's dope.
It's certainly exciting. Slowly but surely killing off the dark funnel. Hey,
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun.
awesome, man. You mentioned the flow a second ago. What is that?
So the Flow is a streaming platform that we've made for B2B marketers. So literally just like Netflix, but for B2B marketers. And we have a bunch of series on there. We have original series, and then we also have a few series that we host on there from other companies. Um, and it's broken down up into different categories. So we have a entertainment category where you can watch a ton of different series that are entertaining in nature. We have an edutainment category. We have a tactical category, education, podcasts, documentaries. So it's pretty cool. And, we're building it out. We launched with 15 series. And right now we currently have a little over 20 series in production, with 19 of those series being from external creators, uh, which is what we refer to influencers and industry leaders and like content creators as.
That's amazing, man. How did you come up with the concept for this? So, Netflix for B2B marketing, essentially.
To be very honest, I think it's just a natural progression of a certain mindset, because at different times there were multiple of us building towards this vision that hadn't communicated with each other. So like when I was doing easy mode and I hadn't met Amir or any of the HockeyStack guys last year when I was doing easy mode with Todd, like one day it just hit me and I was like, dude, we were making the website. So we are making a homepage, about us page, and we were like, we should have a content page because we have all this content that we've made for LinkedIn, and we posted on LinkedIn and then it just kind of like disappears into the void. And so there was no way for me to like reference content that I'd made in the past. Someone would come and be like, hey, how do you come up with ideas? And I'm like, man, I made a whole sorry, excuse my language. I was like, I made a whole video on this.
We like
before.
swearing here. You're okay.
Cool. Okay, good. So I was like, man, I made a whole freaking video on this before, but then I'm scrolling through my like LinkedIn content to find it. And so we're building out this website. I'm on a Zoom call with Todd and we're like, yo, I was like, hear me out. We should get all of our content and we should group it into series. At that time, the content really wasn't serialized, but I was like, we can find common themes within our content and serialize it. I was like, for example, Todd, you have a boatload of videos where you're just in your backyard talking to the camera. I was like, we can just collect all of them and call that series like Backyard Tales or some shit. And that could be like one series. And then I was like, I have a bunch of videos where I'm playing my PS5. I'm streaming my PS5 while talking about marketing. I was like, I can just grab all those videos, turn it into a series called Level Up. And then so that's what we did at first. What we attempted to do, we never went through with this because, we had full-time jobs. It was a side hustle thing. And so it never really came to fruition. But that is, if you're listening, this is how you can go about it. It's like you don't have to start with new series. If you have existing content, you can just find common themes and then sort of serialize these videos or blog posts, whatever the case may be, based off the common themes they have. So that was like last year. Fast forward to March of this year, Amir gets in touch with me. I was kind of burnt out, I'm not going to lie. So I was on a break. I had like no intentions of joining a company and starting like work again. I was in Dubai. I was on like, just because I live in Pakistan. So Dubai is like right there, not an hour drive. It's like an hour and a half flight away, right? Yeah. So I was in Dubai. I went there to record a song for Lavender because there are no like
Is
professionals.
that the hip hop track that you created for the
Yeah,
Lavender
right.
Duh?
That was the Lavender song. So there's no like professional studios where I could record rap music here in Pakistan. So I went to Dubai to record it. Emir got in touch with me, and I even told him straight up. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm taking this call out of respect, but I'm not really looking to like join a company right now." And he's like, "Let me just show you the product." And I was like, "All right, cool." Then he showed me the product, and I was like, "Holy fucking shit!" And then from there, it was like he was like, "Yeah, this is the product. We want you to be the first marketer. Like all this stuff. Like he personally like sought me out himself and all that stuff." So then he was telling me about that, and I was like, "All right, man. Well, I like the product, and if I am to join, like this is how I want to do marketing." Because on a side note, there's a lot of marketers listening to this. On a side note, the reason that I had taken a break is because the previous year in 2022, I was just after like bad spot after bad spot after bad spot, right? So towards the end of the year, I was like, screw this, man. I was like, I know what I'm capable of. I don't need these companies, like they need me, right? And so like I needed to have that mindset shift because otherwise I was just like chasing job after job after job, right? So I was like, screw that, and I sat out. And so 3 months later, or when Amir popped up, or 2 months later, and I'm talking to him, I'm just like, hey man, like, this is how I want to do it. Like I'm gonna let you know, like I want to do this, 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 and this. And he was like, you got it. And I was like,
So you sold him on the idea of the flow before you ever came on board, essentially.
not the flow yet. So the first few things that I told him was like, hey, I want to do like, because you got to take it from the top, right? You can't just jump straight into it like, hey, I want to make a streaming platform, and they're like, what, right? So like, I was like, hey man, like I want to do creative marketing. Like I'm not trying to just, you know, rely on blog post all day, right? Because that's like what ebooks, newsletters. I was like, it's cool. It can be a part of the cycle. I understand the benefit of that, and I don't doubt it. And I think it deserves a part in our cycle too. But I want to do a lot more than that. And he was like, you got it. And I was like, all right, well, I want to, hire like designer, animator, this, and like go all in on social and create funny content, entertaining content. He's like, you got it. So he just kept saying, you got it to me. And so I was like, you know what, man, let me see how far I can push this. So I was like, and I want to create a streaming platform, like going back to like what Todd and I were talking about. And then so this guy was like, go to hockeystack.com/theflow. And then I pull it up, and he was already building towards that. So it wasn't a streaming platform yet. It was more of a content. It was more than a blog, more than a content library, but not quite a streaming platform yet. But he was like, I'm already building something like that out. Why do you think I came to you? And then I was like, holy shit. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. And so we had already, wanted to do the same thing when I joined. But immediately from there, it wasn't like, let's start building the flow. From there, it was like, okay, now we need to create, a strategic narrative that's going to be the story that we share with our industry, right? And we need to tie our narrative to our product's vision, our company's objectives, our audience's interests, right? There's all these things that we need to build our strategic narrative on. So those were the first things I jumped into. And then from there, that's what I really like about this, right? Like when you see the result of everything, you're like, wow, this is fun and creative and it works. But it's like when you look behind the curtain, it's like, dude, it's fucking insane strategy, like the most like, dopest, like for me, dude, like it's tying everything together. And that's the type of stuff I'd love to dive into on this call, just like what exactly those things are.
Well, where would you like to start then? Because I'm eager to pick your brain, dig deep into the process from start to finish. Maybe a better question to start with, actually, because a word you just mentioned is the word results there from a creative perspective. But I know, obviously, you see brands like Lavender, they've drunk from the altar. And then you have Max and the team at Zora, who've created Zora Plus, a very similar format. for a lot of marketing and demand generation leaders listening, I think their biggest potential objection to this is building a business case for it in-house. How did you go about doing that? It sounds like Amir was already on board, but is there, you know, when creating a strategy, was there a business case you had to build for that as well?
Again, you know, these guys were already on board, Amir, Buddha, Arda, but you know, there's what I guess to keep everyone motivated on the same page, you know, like the hoorah factor of it, right? Like, let's effing do this, right? That's where I would state my cases and like, this is how this is going to work, and we're going to do this, and it's going to result in this. And like, you know, diving into the strategy part of it, if you want to do this at your company, I would say like, you have to think about it this way, right? Like, content is what moves the needle, right? Like, content is how you do everything, right? Like, if you want to build awareness, content. If you want to create demand, content. If you want to move people down the funnel, so to speak, content, right? If you want people to know what your product is, know how it works, how it helps, why you need something like that, that's all content, right? When people get on sales calls and then they have questions, and then your salespeople come back to you and you're like, hey, man, these are the most frequently asked questions we have, and we don't have content around this. What do? You make content around it. So everything is done through content. Now, the issue that we face is we have all of these different initiatives. We have all of these different goals we need to accomplish, business objectives we need to accomplish. We have all of these different purposes we need to fulfill. So then what do? We write out those objectives, and then we create siloed activities to accomplish those objectives. So it's like, we have our blog, SEO is going well, we're ranking, traffic's coming in, we're getting website visitors, but your blog and the topics that you're covering on your blog have absolutely nothing to do with the topics you're covering on your podcast. Because on your podcast, you're just interviewing experts and you're talking to these guests, and on your blog post, on your blog, you're doing keyword research, digging up keywords that have, you know, decent keyword difficulty score, decent search volume, and then you're writing content around it. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on TikTok, you're just creating funny skits. So like, we're doing all these things and we're fulfilling those goals, but everything is siloed. And the marketing team, it's difficult for them to really work together because they all have their different initiatives. So what this does, this media platform approach, content hub approach, however you want to refer to it, it accounts for all of these things in the beginning, right? We're accounting for all of these things in the beginning. And then we're building out a plan that helps us accomplish specific purposes through these series. So it's not one series that drives pipeline or anything like that. It's the fact that we have all of these series working together to accomplish different purposes that we can distribute through many different methods out there in the wild, constantly coming across, you know, our target audience or ICP, they're constantly coming across it. And it's content, it's frictionless content in the sense that it's been built to serve as an enjoyable experience for them, rather than built to, you know, hey, download this ebook, right? And so what that is going back to the easy mode framework. The easy mode, and I won't explain the framework. It's an 8-part framework, gonna take forever, right? But it's an 8-part framework, and the first part is mindset. It dives into this concept I made called idea-driven content, which is a way to understand what it means to make good content and then consistently create it, because it breaks good content down into 3 different types based on common variables that different high-performing content assets have, right? So like, that's part 1 of the framework. Part 2 of the framework is purpose. So part 1 is mindset, part 2 is purpose. The purpose part of the framework, we broke it down into something called the content journey, which is the journey your content goes on. Like, this is the purpose behind all of the content you'll be creating, right? You need to establish these things first before you create anything. And what that is 3 parts: top-down content, middle-out content, and bottom-up content. So top-down content is the content you create that's meant to reach the people at your target orgs that are going to drive company-wide change. The middle-out content that you create is meant to reach the people at your target orgs that are going to tactically implement that change. So to give you an example real quick, if I'm a marketing agency and I'm preaching this switch from demand gen to lead gen, and I use this as an example because I'm sure it's an example every freaking marketer will understand, right? So I'm a marketing agency and I'm preaching that we should switch from lead gen to demand gen. I have a podcast and I have these CEOs, VPs, they listen to my podcast. And over the course of 3 or 4 months listening to my podcast, they're convinced, they're bought in, right? But they're not the ones that are going to tactically implement that change in the company. They can drive that change, but they're not going to tactically implement it. So my podcast was meant to reach them, the people that could tactically implement that change. Now they're ready to go. So what are they going to do? They're going to reach out to senior directors, VPs, these people who are then going to be responsible for tactically implementing the processes, tech stack, whatever, that's going to actually help that company make that change. So then for them, we create content. So whereas for the top-down people, we have our strategic narrative, we have our unique point of views, the story of the old game versus the new game. This is where all this content is being created, targeting these people. Then we have our middle out content, the tactical content meant to reach the people that are going to implement it. So this is where HockeyStack Academy, right? And which we broke down into marketing 101, marketing 201, and marketing 301. 101 is, what is HockeyStack? How does it work? 201 is, how do you use HockeyStack to actually do things? And 301 is advanced marketing concepts. And then the last one is bottom up content. This is content that's meant to reach the end user, that's going to drive awareness and admiration from the inside. So for example, and we see this all the time now, right? Because of all the content we make, let's say Grizzle, Tom's considering HockeyStack. He goes and he's talking to, someone on his team, and he's like, hey man, you guys ever heard of HockeyStack? And 3 people are like, dude, hell yeah. I freaking love their content. This has just made things for HockeyStack's AE a lot easier, right? Because it's more friendlier conversations. There's more admiration involved. There's a lot more stuff involved. So top-down content, middle-out content, bottom-up content.
The way you've just outlined it, it's the philosophy behind how content should be.
Why, thank you, sir.
Right? Building advocacy from within, right? So when people actually, this is, I feel like, is such an underrated objective of content, is making sure that you're part of the conversation behind closed doors and in the company Slack channels. And it sounds like it's working for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. Shout out to Todd, the other part of Easy Mode, for coming up with that concept of the content journey. It's amazing. The second part to that is it gets even better, right? So if your top-down content is meant to reach the people who are going to drive company-wide change, okay, who are those people, right? Make a list of them. And then middle out people, these are the people that are going to tactically implement that change. Who are they? Make a list of them. Same thing with bottom up content, the end users that are going to drive admiration from within. Make a list of them. Now you have this list of like actual people, actual job titles. These are people you can reach out to on LinkedIn, connect with them, network with them, set up 15 minutes with them to learn about their challenges, their goals, their interest, right? Their day-to-day tasks and stuff like that, as opposed to building fictional buyer personas and trying to categorize millions of different personalities into like one fictional character.
It almost sounds like ABM.
In a way, yeah. You know what I mean? It's but I guess you could totally say that. It's just more, I guess, purposeful and targeted uh, not marketing, but strategy, right? Like we're building. It's because it's always like know your audience, know your audience. What's like, okay, well, fucking go beyond that. How? Like, how do I know who my audience? How do I segment my audience, right? Other than like the data that I can get from like ad platforms and shit. Like, how do I actually know my audience?
It's that qualitative stuff that only comes through conversations.
Right. So that's part two of the framework. And then part three, the last part of the framework, the last part of the framework that I really adopted, there's 8 parts, but part three is what's it called? Strategy. So part 1 was mindset, part 2 is purpose, part 3 is strategy. And strategy is broken up into 2 parts, but the one part that's really important is another concept that I came up with called the realm of relevancy, which is a way for you to turn your strategic narrative into a comprehensive list of topics. So that's a fully loaded topic. If I just made a 12-minute video on that, so you guys can check that out afterwards if you're curious as to how that works. But these 3 things, right? Like the mindset part, where it defines good content as type 1, insightful substance, type 2, insightful substance presented in an interesting format, type 3, insightful substance in an interesting format and built on an entertaining concept. This is like the mindset behind the content I create. Then the purpose of the content I create, and then my realm of relevancy, where I now have my purpose. I know how to create all kinds of different forms of content. I go to my realm of relevancy, I pick a topic, and then I create content around it. And then so as you do that, you're creating top-down content, you're creating middle-out content, you're creating bottom-up content. What starts to happen? You start to accumulate a shit ton of content. And because you've been distributing it on social, it's just disappearing into the void. So then again, as I said before, it's like a natural progression of this mindset. You're naturally going to be like, well, hey, man, we should fucking collect all of our content and put it in a place that we own so people can just like easily access it. It's like, hey, while we're at it, why not make it to where they can just consume all that content in that page? And then, hey, while we're at it, why not break it up into different categories so it's easier to browse through all this content? You see, like you just naturally build towards like, oh, fuck, Netflix for marketers.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
And so that's, in a nutshell, like that is the story behind the flow. We can also get into like how influencers got involved, and there's a bunch of different ways we can take it.
Yeah, 100%. I would love to get into the tactical execution side of things. Let's use a hypothetical, right? Let's say we at Grizzle, we're on board, we've drunk from the altar, we've packed our bags and we're ready to board the plane. How would we get started, like from a practical executing on this, like actually creating the content, getting in front of a camera, building the framework and the infrastructure like you have done with the flow, because it looks just like Netflix in a way, right? How would we go about doing that? Where would we start?
So the first thing I'd say to do is like assess your current marketing engine as the way it is, right? Easiest freaking way to do this, just open up a Google sheet and just like, hey man, what is all the shit we do? It's like, okay, we got this podcast, we have a newsletter, we blog, we do LinkedIn content, right? So just start listing out all of the things you do, your initiatives, the efforts that you're making, right? Just list all of that out. And then from there, in a column over, it's like you start to sort of detail this content. It's like, okay, what's the cadence, right? And it's like, okay, this is weekly, this is monthly, this is bi-weekly. And then it's like, okay, once you've really learned the content journey, the top down, middle out, bottom up stuff, it's like, okay, which one is this? Is it top down content? Is it middle out content? Or is it bottom up content? Once you've gotten the type 1, type 2, type 3 stuff down, it's like, all right, is this type 1 content? Is this type 2? And so you start to just label all this stuff, your current marketing initiatives. You've also, so you start to list out all your marketing initiatives so then you can see, right? And here's where you'll really get an idea of, it's like, oh shit, man, all we do is bottom up content. Or, like hey, like 80% of our shit's middle out content. Like it's all product driven. It's all tactical content about our product. And so you start to see like, all right, we need to make more top down content. We need to make more bottom up content. You want to balance this out. You want your content engine to be a good balance of these things. You don't want it to be lopsided in any one way or another. You want like a good combination of this content out there. And so I would say start with that. Assess your current marketing efforts, assess your current engine, have that built out. From there, it's all about like your narrative, because that's gonna drive everything. And it might sound like I poop on SEO, but even like your narrative will drive that as well. Like again, we account for that as well. And so step two is like the strategic narrative, right? Like what is it? You have to build it out. When I joined HockeyStack, I remember having like this 4-hour phone call with the 3 co-founders, Emir, Buddha, and Arda, and they just dumped like everything on me, like vision for the product, competitive landscape, marketing trends, their own perspectives, and just everything, right? And I took all of that and I puzzle pieced it into a realm of relevancy. The realm of relevancy, just in a nutshell, it's a process that turns your narrative into a list of topics. We take your narrative, break it down into 3 unique point of views, break each point of view down into 3 perspectives, and then each of those perspectives are going to be broken down into a ton of details.
I'll include a link to that 12-minute video in the show notes.
It's because it's a chart, right? It's a flow chart, and it's difficult for me to explain a flow chart without giving you like a full-blown 10-minute explanation of it. And so you can check that out, but you need to turn your strategic narrative into a realm of relevancy. Now, you've done step 1, you've assessed your current marketing efforts, you've seen what your marketing engine looks like, you've built a narrative, and you've turned that narrative into a realm of relevancy. And then from now, here, we go to the purposes of your content, right? Like the top down, middle out, bottom up. Let's start ideating, right? And so, for example, one time Emir, on like our first phone call, he was showing me HockeyStack, how the product works. And when we got to the dashboard part, he was showing me how the dashboard builder works. And unlike other dashboards, you don't build your own dashboards by like checking different metrics. Like, oh, show me MQLs, show me this, show me that. And then it shows you a chart. You build the dashboard by inputting like a combination of goals. So it's like, person has visited this page and is from this company and has also done this and this and that. So like, that's how you build these dashboards. So when he showed me that, and he was like, for example, if you want to see the blog categories that drive the most revenue, you just do this, 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 and this. And then boom, he had a dashboard that showed me that. And I was like, holy fuck. So in my mind, I was like, dude, like, what if we made a show where we got suggestions from our audience on things they found difficult to track and measure, and then we used HockeyStack to create a dashboard tracking and measuring that exact thing. And then we just kept this going based off like audience suggestions, right? So there's middle out content right there. Content meant to reach the people that are going to tactically implement this. So now we have that series going. People love it. They reference it on sales calls, all that type of stuff. So it's just going through this cycle, right? Again, like one series isn't going to move the needle. So now we have top-down content where we have our strategic narrative delivered through a 3-part blog series. We have our strategic narrative delivered through podcasts. We have our strategic narrative delivered through LinkedIn posts. And so like there's all this content going out around our narrative. Then we have middle out content where we have the academy, we have tactical content, we have walkthroughs, we have funny content around our product, and then we have a whole bunch of different bottom up content. And so all of this different content are series, content series, they're shows. And so we're able to not just distribute them on LinkedIn, YouTube. We're looking into using Mountain as well. So uh, it's a software. It's an ad platform for connected TV. So just like the way you would run ads on Google, you can run ads on like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, all that stuff. And then, I mean, I guess Mountain plug here, but it's so cool, dude. Like you can also retarget website visitors. So like if someone visits your website and then later that night they're like watching Netflix, like boom, you can just show them like an episode of The Worst Marketer in the World or something.
I am looking into this later.
Yeah, so there's a distribution aspect of it. Like all these series are being distributed, but then they're also being backlogged, cataloged on our own website. And then people come here, they watch all this stuff. We see it through website activity, right? Like this person watched this episode of this series for 15 minutes or whatever. And so, yeah, that's how everything comes together to accomplish all of those, different purposes that we were talking about in the beginning, creating demand, driving awareness, moving people down the funnel. It's all done through these series and the distribution of these series, like getting these series in front of the right people, like our audience, going to where they hang out and distributing this content.
It's making the content that you're already creating in the first place work harder for you, making it more evergreen,
Right.
which is the problem with a lot of social content. Earlier, you mentioned about how you get other creators and influencers involved and creating series for you. I think you mentioned something like the 19 of the 20 series that you have, are they created by other creators?
So there's 15 internal series. So 15 series through internal creators. Right now we have like up and ready, like you can go right now and watch them on the flow. There's like 5 or 6 from external creators, but we have 19 in development from external creators, and then like another 5 or 6 in development internally.
Amazing. How do you get these people on board?
One, it's like a side hustle for them, right? It's not free. We pay the creators, right? So, if you're making, 4 episodes a month for us and it's an easy $2,000, right? Like per month, it's like cool, right? So one thing, there's that. On the other hand, like we reach out to these creators and it's all purpose driven, right? The way this happened was we were initially creating all of these series internally, right? To like fulfill those different purposes, middle out, top down, bottom up, blah, 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 right? To like fulfill those purposes, we were doing it all eternally. And then I remember talking to Todd, and he used to do The Worst Marketer in the World. And he was like, dude, I kind of want to bring it back. But he used to do them like TikTok style. So he like filmed them on his phone, vertical. And I was like, dude, okay, what if we brought it back, but like we switched to like a 4K camera, like made it a little bit more cinematic and shit. Like instead of you doing the voiceover, like we got a professional voiceover artist to like do he's the worst marketer in the world, like all that shit, right?
I think I've seen that. He wears like a smoking jacket and amazing.
Yeah, so he was like, let's do it. And then so I was like, wait a second, like this is kind of the equivalent of like Netflix going out to get like a popular actor and then like having that actor like make a series for their platform. So then I was like, like how can I do more of that? And then so I started reaching out to more and more like creators in our space, just like Tim Davidson, like those kind of guys. And the goal was get these creators to create a series that, one, they'll enjoy making, but also helps us deliver messages from our narrative, right? So, for example, the way that we came up with Tim's series, we made up a series where he parodies Bob Ross, the old painter, the guy with the afro that like paints and stuff. And so the concept of that series is just it's different stories of old games versus new games. So like episode 1 was on the B2B buyer's journey. So the old game versus the new game, how the buyer's journey used to be before, how it is now. Episode 2 was on events. How events used to be before, how they are now. And then episode 3 was about attribution, how attribution used to be before, how it is now. And that was more of like a hockey stack type of episode. So we don't build these series around hockey stack, but we build these series on concepts that allow us to every once in a while insert hockey stack and it still feels natural to the series. So that's how we work with creators. And it's all really just concept driven for the most part. Like I'm working on one series right now. I don't know if I can mention with who yet. But you know, it's an SEO guy. He's a really, really good SEO expert. And then I was like, okay, he's an SEO expert. Let's make a series where, you know, we tie SEO success metrics to demand gen initiatives by using HockeyStack and to like tie the two together.
So there's relevancy there.
Right, exactly. So it's like easy series. And so, you know, we create that, we start getting that out there. And yeah, that's how we use external creators. It's, you know, adds a little bit of credibility to just like the behind the message and all that stuff. And, you know, you tap into their audience and all that good stuff.
Awesome, man. You talked a little bit about distribution. Obviously, social plays a key part of it. And we just talked about Mountain. What other techniques, tricks, and tactics are you using to get as much visibility on this content as possible?
It's a good question. The realm of relevancy really helps with that. Because again, once you create the realm of relevancy, that's where your content starts from, right? You're no longer going to come up with topics based on, like we mentioned, keyword research or what competitors are doing. Like, hey, you know, so-and-so made this comparison landing page. Let's make one too. Remember when that was happening? Like one company, I don't know who it was, but like a few made a comparison landing pages. And the next thing you know, it's like the hottest tactic in the industry, right? So like, this is usually how we come up with our topics, our content, keyword research, competitors, or tools, and trends, right? Like AI trend or the Google algorithm or whatever, then everyone's creating content about it. But once you create a realm of relevancy, like all your content starts from there. And so because of that, one of the first things I did was turn our entire narrative, our realm of relevancy, into a 3-part blog series. So every single thing that's in our realm, every single thing that's in our narrative, it's in a 3-part blog series that you can read on our site on Attribution 2.0. So our entire narrative of Attribution 2.0 is broken up into Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. Now, and I still geek out over this to this day because I still think it's so freaking cool. So now, anytime I create any content about anything, I can always link back to one of those chapters. And so it's like an endless way to just distribute every single thing I'm making. So, for example, our narrative, Attribution 2.0, it's broken into 3 point of views. One of the point of views is better understanding the customer journey helps you get more leadership buy-in. That point of view is broken down into 3 perspectives. One of the 3 perspectives under that, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but one of the subtopics under there is how there's a never-ending debate between leadership and marketers. How on one hand, marketers want to do creative work, they want to do brand building, but leaders don't want to invest in this type of work unless they can show that it works. But because we don't want to invest in this type of work, and no one's really doing this type of work, it's hard for us to show that it works. So it's this never-ending debate. It's just never going to stop. And so what I did is, again, Level Up, that show I make where I stream video games and talk about marketing. I made a Level Up episode where I was talking about the never ending debate. And it's like this 6-7 minute episode. It's been watched for like 2,000-3,000 minutes on LinkedIn. It's been watched for like, last I checked, like 30 or 40 hours on Wistia. We host through Wistia, so on the flow. It's been watched for like 30, 40 hours on the flow. So I talked about, thanks, man. I talked about that subtopic in that episode. And when I posted that episode on LinkedIn, I was able to be like in the comments, like, if you want to read more about this, and I could link to chapter 3 of that narrative blog series. So everything that we create feeds off of everything that we create, because it's all coming from the realm of relevancy, and it's all broken up into one of these 3 specific purposes. So nothing is siloed anymore. So it's not like, our blog posts don't match our ebooks, which doesn't match our social media activity, which doesn't match, our whatever, right? Like YouTube videos or something, right? Everything, it works together.
This is amazing, man. This has been really insightful. What do you think the future of this methodology looks like? And maybe even more broadly, the future of content marketing as a consequence of what you're doing? Because it's spreading, right? You have Audience Plus talking about it and advocating for it. Brands like Zora investing more into it. You guys are making a splash, a big noise in the space. Where do you think we're going to be in a year's time?
I mean, I honestly think that this approach is the near future of B2B SaaS marketing. Because as we all know, lots of content marketers, even lots of leadership is getting tired of the MQL chasing approach, right? Like, let's just generate leads and dump them on sales. I don't think that's the goal of your marketing team. Your marketing team is not to generate leads for sales. Your marketing team is to make conversations easier for sales. Before someone gets on a call with your sales team, they should be aware of what you do, what your product is, how it helps, why it's needed, all of that stuff. So that way, your AEs don't have to do any educating or marketing or selling on these calls. They can take more of a consultative approach and help these people understand how your specific product can help them solve their specific internal challenges. So it's like, once more and more companies understand that, and then we start to abandon like this old way of doing things to where we're just trying to chase these MQLs and stuff, I think it's just, again, I could foresee a company not even knowing about that other companies are doing this streaming platform approach, or the Flows out there, or Audience Plus is out there, and I could still see them naturally building towards that if they had that mindset shift.
And that's why that is the first part of the Easy Mode framework.
Right? So like, that's really what it all starts with. And so, as everyone builds towards it, it's going to be like, okay, now it's getting competitive. We all have streaming platforms. So it's like, okay, let's improve the shit out of our series. And then someone with a boatload of money is going to go hire Ryan Gosling. And the next thing you know, we're going to have this B2B SaaS show with like Ryan Gosling in it. And it's like, well, fuck, how do I compete with that? And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go get Kevin Hart. And so it sounds silly, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's the natural progression of things. And that's just how I see it building out, playing out over time.
You need to create the next Ryan Reynolds of B2B marketing before someone else does.
I mean, he's already out there with his own software company doing his own commercials. So Ryan Reynolds is already killing it in B2B SaaS.
Very good point, actually.
So it's just a matter, it's already kind of happening.
I'm really excited where this all goes. I'm a big proponent of building a media brand around your marketing. So this has been a fascinating conversation. One last question I like to end these podcast episodes on is kind of around what you're up to right now. What are you working on at the moment that you are kind of most excited about in the coming weeks and months that you would love to share with our audience?
Well, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing that I'm excited about is a personal thing. I've been in Pakistan for, I don't know, man, last 11 years. I built my career from Pakistan, and I'm moving to Colorado in a couple of months. So
Oh,
I'm moving back to the
congratulations, man.
States. Yeah, thank you, man. I was raised in Houston, Texas, but now I'm moving to Colorado. Have a house being built there now. So once I get back, man, I have a lot of limitations on me right now. It's not like I'm exactly in, I can't go outside and walk around my scenic neighborhood. You guys would not want to see the outside of where I live. So all I really have is this room in terms of content creation. So I can't tell you how excited I am to go back to actually be able to just make like all types of different content, man.
You've done really well with the constraint with that
Thanks,
you've
man.
got. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. I do want to add one thing. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about a lot of shit. I don't want someone to be listening and be overwhelmed or be like, okay, that was great, but man, what the fuck was that? Like, how do I even action this? Like, where do I go from here? So, the best way I can summarize everything, like the best way I can summarize all of this, right, is as a B2B SaaS marketer, you have two goals, right? Your first goal is to educate your market, and your second goal is to entertain your audience, okay? On your first goal, to educate your market, you have to educate them in two areas. The first area you need to educate them on is your product, because they need to know how it works, what is it, why do I fucking need it, what does it do for me, right? Like, they need to know that. So you need to create a lot of product-driven content to accomplish that goal. The second area you need to educate them on is your narrative, because aside from knowing what your product is and what it does, they need to know why they need such a product in the first place. So you need to create content around your narrative. So that's your first goal, to educate your market. And you educate them on your product and you educate them on your narrative. Your second goal is to entertain your target audience. Now, the reason you want to entertain them is because, as we all know, not everyone is looking to buy right now, right? Like, I don't know. I think the stat is like there's only like 5% of your ICP, your target market, that's looking to buy right now. So we know that. It's not anything new. We know that. We know we need to stay top of mind. So when they are ready to buy, they think of us and they come to us. We know that. Now, here's the problem with that, because we don't make really any distinguishments here. So what happens is, to stay top of mind, companies do one of two things. They either spam, so they're just constantly talking about their product, so your product is always in front of your face, and that's how they stay top of mind, which is not, something the audience enjoys. Or the second thing they do is they make entertaining content for the sake of making entertaining content. Let's make our audience laugh and let's do all that. The issue with that is, if you're just making entertaining content and it has no tie-ins to your product, then people that are only coming across that content have zero idea what your product does. So when they do move in market, they aren't going to think of you because you're not associated with that challenge that they're trying to solve. So that defeats the purpose of making the entertaining content in the first place. So what you actually want to do when you entertain your audience is to think of a concept that associates your product with a specific outcome and then make that. So this could range from anything from me rapping about my product to, like, if I had a project management tool, I could make a commercial of the ancient Egyptians using my project management tool to, like, build the pyramids. And it's like, problem solved. You know what my product does. You're going to remember it, right? So that's all you have to do. Educate your target market on your product and your audience, and then entertain your audience by associating your product to specific outcomes. If you just, like, do those three things, like, you're gravy. Like, you're good.
That is a really crystal clear way of simplifying everything we've just talked about for the last 50 minutes. Excellent. I know exactly where to start now, Obed.
Nice. That's good, man. Great, man. Yeah, I'm just, I love talking about this stuff, and I'm glad it could, even if it's a little bit helpful, gets you guys going. I think it's super cool.
I think listeners are going to get a tremendous amount of value from this. I really appreciate you spending the time to lay it all out for the last hour, man. Before we jump off, where can listeners and viewers learn more about you?
You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I usually just spend, in terms of like social, I'm usually just on LinkedIn. Obaid Durrani, you can search for me, or just go to HockeyStack, find me in the employee list. And yeah, if you guys want to check out some of, all we've been talking about the flow the whole time. So if you want to see what it looks like, in reality, just go to hockeystack.com/the flow. And that's the dash flow. So yeah.
It's also very prominent in the navigation as well. So not hard to miss.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Obed, thank you ever so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Tom. Awesome talking to you again, man.